Most higher education faculty members have a very difficult task teaching in a lecture hall. They are expected to engage their students and provide appropriate and effective instruction to students with varying levels of preparation. Additionally, higher education faculty are expected to keep their students engaged and demonstrate mastery of the course objectives. Learning-centered teaching is a pedagogy covered by Terry Doyle in his book, Learner-Centered Teaching: Putting the Research on Learning into Practice, which can greatly benefit students and faculty members. First of all, we should start by asking, what actually is learning? Research tells us that learning is a change in the neuron networks of the human brain. More synapses means that a person has more efficient cognitive processing, higher cognitive capacity, and more flexibility. Another important finding pertains to neuroplasty, which means the ability of the brain to change through the addition of new neural connections, which provides proof of the statement that the person doing the most work is doing the most learning. This neural growth occurs when the brain is focused on a new activity, confirming the long-held belief that educators must have the student's attention for learning to occur. So actively engaged students are working harder and learning more than passively engaged students, as in a lecture hall. Doyle, 2011. What does the research actually tell us? Terry Doyle emphasizes that we have an obligation to follow where the research findings lead us. Over the past few decades, numerous studies have been conducted. It's important to consider the research as a whole, rather, and focus on the research that stands the test of time. One such area is neuroplasticity, which refers to the ability of the brain to grow new neurons and additional neural connections. When a student actively focuses on new information, new neural growth can occur, so focus is a key to learning. Research shows that all people have difficulty staying focused on a topic for more than a few minutes. Interestingly, it would seem that daydreaming would be counterproductive to learning. However, recent research shows just the opposite. Studies by Lauren Frank in 2009 demonstrate that downtime following learning can solidify the experience into permanent memory, and this doesn't just occur while sleeping as once was previously thought. Multitasking has become a highly thought of activity, but research shows that multitasking may just make us feel better rather than make us truly more productive. Switching tasks actually leads to mental fatigue, which can make learning more difficult. Finally, another area where research can be quite surprising for higher education is in the importance of exercise in learning. Humans have moved to increase their survival, and our brains developed with this continual movement. Research studies have found that there is a direct connection between movement and cognition. Exercise strengthens the brain through the release of proteins that support synaptic growth and vascular function. The brain functions that exercise strengthens result in making learning easier. Increases in exercise result in increases in important neurochemicals that are essential to learning. These chemicals increase attentiveness, focus, motivation, and positive attitude, all of which are very important to learning. Exercise increases the formation of synapses, which essentially is what occurs with learning, new synapses and changes in the brain. Another benefit from exercise is the decrease in behavior problems following aerobic exercise. Doyle, 2011. So what exactly does learner-centered teaching look like? This photograph shows a scale-up classroom. The acronym SCALE-UP stands for Student-Centered Active Learning Environment with Upside-Down Pedagogy, from North Carolina State University website, 2013. In a scale-up classroom, the instructor functions as a facilitator. Notice that there is no apparent front area of the room. The tables are round to facilitate student discussion and interaction. The TV monitors are for the students to project their information while working in their groups. Environments where students are actively engaged enhance student learning. Learning environments with authentic, relevant, and useful learning give students the opportunity to focus and do the work in the classroom. In these environments, the learner-centered learning activities activate the brain's reward system through the increase of dopamine. This reward system gives a sensation of pleasure, which makes it more likely that we will engage in the activity in the future. Doyle, 2011. Why should we shift from being a lecturer to a facilitator? A facilitator supports student learning by creating an engaging environment, well-planned activities, and guiding students towards the goals, rather than telling them answers for memorization. People are not just born facilitators. Facilitation is a skill that must be developed and practiced. It often feels uncomfortable at first to both the facilitator and the students because most of us were taught in teacher-centered environments. Shifting to facilitation will also require a change from traditional planning before classes. The faculty member won't be performing as the sage on the stage, but will have to use carefully designed activities to guide the students towards the desired learning outcomes. The first step is writing daily learning objectives. The facilitator should be able to write down what the student should be able to do after participating in the classes. Mastery of the daily learning objectives should be observable and measurable. For the second step, the facilitator should consider what the best use of the class time is, what students will be doing during the class as well as outside of class, and any required resources, how long activities will take to complete, and how mastery of the daily learning objectives will be measured. The third step is additional practice to help reinforce the learning and/or extend the learning. The fourth step is giving appropriate and supportive feedback to the students in a timely fashion. The feedback should be more than just a list of deficiencies. It should be supportive and help guide the student towards the desired outcome. Feedback needs to follow very closely after the activity for the greatest benefit to the student. Shifting from lectures to discussions benefits students. Numerous studies indicate that students learn better and retain more from discussions rather than lectures. These studies have also found that students prefer to learn through discussions over lecture. Despite this preference, many students may need to be convinced that discussion is an effective way to learn, since they've spent so many years in traditional lecture classrooms, and because of this, they often feel uncomfortable with highly interactive discussions. Doyle, 2011. One of the most discouraging experiences in shifting to learner-centered teaching is the pushback that will likely occur from some of the students. For years, education has been teacher-centered, and many students have learned how to be successful in this environment and have become quite comfortable with it. While teacher-centered learning might not be nearly as interesting or engaging, it is easier, and it's not unusual for students to grow accustomed to watching the teacher do the majority of the work in the classroom. Additionally, the current youth culture prefers to be seen as lazy rather than stupid. So the negative consequences are much less for a lazy person than for a student who takes a risk in learner-centered education and could be seen by others as stupid. Doyle, 2011. So with history and current culture working against learner-centered teaching, how can we get students to engage and do the work in the classroom? Structuring the activities so that students are doing the work can be as simple as employing cumulative testing, the use of student wikis, rewriting papers, retesting, practice quizzes, mapping, and scaffolding. The Emporium model developed by Virginia Tech University allows students to progress at their own pace through the use of computer technology. Students access content as needed and obtain individual help when needed. In the Emporium model, students are entrusted with the responsibility of their own learning. This responsibility has resulted in increased student engagement. Another method for engaging students is authentic learning. Authentic learning is the pedagogy focused on activities and assessments that are part of the real world and therefore relevant for students. It's not a new concept in education and actually has its roots in the apprenticeships from previous centuries. Authentic learning gives students the opportunity to investigate complex problems from multiple perspectives, collaborate, reflect, and receive feedback from several real-world sources. An authentic learning experience contains 4 themes, which are determined after analyzing 45 articles describing authentic learning. The 4 themes are: activity involves real-world problems, similar to problems faced by those working in the discipline; open-ended inquiry; discussion and participation in a community of learners; and student-directed learning in the relevant project work. Finally, sharing control and giving students choice is another way that has been found to be successful in getting students to engage in their learning. Students should be able to choose how they engage with course content and choose how they demonstrate what they've learned. When students have more control over what and how they learn, they share in the responsibility for their learning. By sharing the control and the power, we shift the classroom into a learning community. By sharing the responsibility of learning with students, we shift more of the responsibility over to them, which is where it truly belongs. Terry Doyle suggests sharing organizational power by discussing due dates for assignments and assignments that allow student input in the determination of these dates. Additionally, students are very focused on grades, so having a discussion about how grades are earned also empowers them. Giving students choice of topics for papers and projects will enhance their interest and also their engagement on the task. Students who are given choices on which groups they're in also helps them to have a more positive attitude towards working in that group. Talking with students about their preferred learning style can also help the facilitator choose activities and content resources that will be most effective. While it might seem that all students will welcome more control and choice in the classroom, it can be upsetting for some students who are comfortable with the teacher-centered environments, and they may resist being involved in choices for their learning. Doyle, 2011. How can we get others to embrace learner-centered teaching in higher education? Administrators, colleagues, and students will be uncomfortable with change, and many will resist it. Change has been made more difficult by previous pedagogical changes that were not based upon research and consequently did not produce positive results. Administrators and faculty have learned the importance of performing careful, accurate research. Current research truly supports the concept that the person doing the most work does the most learning. A teaching portfolio can be used to help other faculty members understand the importance of learner-centered teaching. Discussion with other faculty members is also important in helping them embrace change. Training in learner-centered teaching pedagogy will also help administrators and faculty understand the benefits and how to incorporate the pedagogy of learner-centered teaching. How can we get students to embrace learner-centered teaching? The first thing that must be done is to explain why learner-centered teaching is beneficial. Students must become responsible for their own learning and become lifelong learners after college. Students should be shown the research and given daily reminders of its importance. It's also important to show students how their brains function and learn. Students also want to know how the courses they are taking will relate to future careers. The skills that are required in LCT are also required in the workplace. Lifelong learning is essential in a successful career, and students must begin to see themselves as lifelong learners. Doyle, 2011.